Hello! Today I'll be talking about the three most important things everyone should know about Buddhism. The first being the Four Noble Truths, which is encapsulated in the second jewel of Buddhism, which is the Dharma. The first jewel, of course, being the Buddha, and the third being the Sangha. Secondly, I will be talking about is Buddhism being a non-theistic religion, where there isn't really a presence of a god. And thirdly, I'll be talking about the Dalai Lama being seen as an equal by the Buddhist community. Let's start off by talking about the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the most important of the Buddha's teachings. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, he realized that the only way to escape the cycle of rebirth and redeath was to end suffering. Thus, the Buddha had laid out the Four Noble Truths that describes the presence of suffering and how to end it as well. The first Noble Truth is that suffering is present. In this context, suffering relates to the impermanence that surrounds us for when everything constantly changes. It doesn't really relate to the physical pain that one feels, typically when they use the word suffering. An example of this is the chair that we're currently sitting in is subject to eventual decline, and the chair won't really be a chair anymore. The second is the cause of suffering, which typically comes from our need of desire, craving, ignorance, and so on. We must realize that suffering is present and not ignore it from our daily lives. The third Noble Truth relates to the end of suffering. Typically, this is attained when one achieves nirvana, which literally means blowing out like a candle. And the last of the Noble Truths is the path that leads to the end of suffering. The fourth Noble Truth can be broken down into the Eightfold Path, which consists of the attributes that we use to achieve nirvana. Some attributes of the Eightfold Path consists of the right view, which highlight having great wisdom and knowing that suffering is present, and the right mindfulness, which highlights trying to observe reality in a different way and truly understand, or try to understand, what impermanence is. In totality, the Four Noble Truths are fundamental in Buddhism because they highlight what the Buddha was actually trying to teach. Let's move on to the second point, where Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. Unlike many religions, Buddhism does not really worship, quote-unquote, a god. Instead, Buddhism concern themselves with the Dharma, which is the teachings of the Buddha, which focuses on understanding the true nature of reality. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, he was not worshipped by others, but instead he sought to teach what he experienced instead, like he did at his first sermon at Benares. The Buddha emphasizes that we must live life without craving for something and try to abide by the truth. Many Buddhists accept the impermanence of life, and because of that, Buddhists seldom ask the question why, whenever something tragic happens, and happens as it is attributed to constant change. An example of this is when someone dies, we don't ask the question, why did this happen, or how can this be prevented, or something along those lines. Instead, Buddhists just relate it to impermanence because they know that even humans are subject to decline eventually, and they just try to live life to the fullest moment at all times. Today, there are many ways to go about searching for the truth, and the most popular by far is meditation, especially in the Western world. Finally, the next most important thing everyone should know about Buddhism is that the Dalai Lama is not a religious leader, but rather the head of the Golak school in Tibetan Buddhism. Many people who are unfamiliar with Buddhism will analogate the Dalai Lama as the Pope of Buddhism. However, this is fundamentally incorrect. Firstly, the way in which the next successor is chosen is completely different. The Pope is chosen by the Church's most senior officials, whereas the Dalai Lama is chosen as a child and undergoes training to eventually become the head of the Golak school. The Dalai Lama is considered to be a reincarnation of the previous Dalai Lama, and so when it's close for the Dalai Lama to die, typically the people who are close to the Dalai Lama try to listen to what he has to say. And so when the Dalai Lama dies, whatever he had said, they try to closely attribute it to where the next Dalai Lama may be. So an example of this is, for example, the Dalai Lama say, I maybe want to be born in the northern hills of China or something similar. So when the Dalai Lama dies, the Golak school has some sort of starting point as to where to look for this new tulku, essentially. In addition to this, The child also undergoes a series of tests to make sure that he is the right person, such as they lay out a series of begging bowls and they ask the child to pick, the right begging bowl, the one that, is tainted or not as shiny as the other ones. The Pope is also seen as a religious leader to the Catholics. However, the Dalai Lama is seen as an equal in the Buddhist community. The Dalai Lama tries to lead humanitarian efforts and educate people around the world about Buddhism and bring about peace. In all, there are many things that are important to know about Buddhism. However, I believe the most important things people should know is that Buddhism is actually at the core. Knowing what Buddhism is at the core can then lead to a whole different discussion, such as the different form of Buddhism and how it actually led into the United States and the Western sphere. Thank you for your time.